All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Ville Chillin. Today, we're following the Halloween theme again, and we're talking about costumes. So we're going to do a little discussion of costumes of the decades, and then we're going to talk about a huge costume / novelty / all kinds of stuff here in Louisville. We're going to talk about Caufields.
Caufields?
Stay tuned. All right. I guess with that, we'll jump straight in. So we kind of wanted to end off the season kind of talking about costumes before it actually gets around to Halloween. And we thought can't really talk about costumes in Louisville without talking about Caufields, right? Caufields. So definitely got to make sure we are bringing them up. And they've actually been around in Louisville for over 100 years now. Did you know that?
I knew they were. I didn't know they've been around that long, though.
Yeah, they've been around a long time. Oh, no. Wrong screen. But yeah, Caufields has been around since pretty much 1920 as a joke and novelty shop. But Kieran Caufield originally opened a photography studio, but as people were waiting for photos to get developed and things, he used some money that he got to buy magic tricks, novelty items, prank jokes, and that kind of stuff to sell in the waiting room. And eventually the novelty business just outgrew the photography business. Decided to hang up the camera and start selling novelty items, jokes, magic tricks, costumes, and everything else along the way.
That's really cool, like especially like the way the technology is back at the time, like with photography. It was probably a really smart, business decision to switch over into more towards like the novelty.
Well, in thinking about the timing, it's the 20s, it's the Great Depression, and people needed a joke. People needed something to laugh about, and they were cheap enough that people could make that happen. So it was definitely a very smart, obviously a pretty smart business decision. They've been in business for over 100 years now. But yeah, definitely pretty crazy. And they've been a major staple in Louisville ever since. They don't just have like Halloween stuff. They have a mix of everything, seasonal merchandise for every holiday. They're one of the oldest and largest theatrical distributors in the nation, too, actively stocking thousands of items. So it says they manufacture, import, and distribute merchandise to locations across the nation and the world abroad. And so I'm sure a lot of like the theater companies around here and like that, probably go to Caufields for some of their stuff.
Right, I saw them on the OVW wrestler show on Netflix. Al Snow was going there for one of the costumes for the show. So yeah, right. Like if you're in production or anything locally or throughout the country, like they support a lot of that through their products.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's got to be nice to have somewhere local too that you can just kind of walk in. And so if you need any last minute Halloween decorations, yard decorations, costumes, whatever.
If you have a movie or a TV show that you're working on or something, like that's definitely the place to get your props.
Yep, definitely. And while you're there and on Main Street, they also have the other largest bat in the world. So Louisville is home to two of the largest bats in the world. One is Caufields, the, flying blood-sucking type of bat. And then, of course, the Louisville Slugger Museum has the world's largest baseball bat. So
Fun facts.
Fun fact, yep. And they're right there, like a block away from each other on Main Street. So see two major Louisville attractions in one go. At least I consider them major Louisville attractions. They're free.
Hey.
Right, exactly. So their website looks pretty extensive. They got a lot of stuff on their online store, and you can even, if you're local, you can just go pick it up. So,
And they're doing a lot on their social media as well. They're doing really good on there. Like, so check them out on like their YouTube or TikTok or Facebook, Instagram, all that.
yeah, it looks like they have some YouTube shorts and then kind of almost a little podcast-esque style series called The Witching Hour. So definitely check them out. Again, they're right there on Main Street, and there you can see the bat. So pretty cool. Definitely cool to have somewhere so local with so much history and just, so much stuff. I mean, it's a huge store. Again, if you need anything, any last minute costumes, anything like that, definitely make sure to check out Caufield's. But speaking of costumes, I guess we're going to start out with a little bit of the history of costumes, or at least modern costumes for Halloween here, right? So in Scotland in the late 19th century, so like 1890s, 1895, there was a tradition called guising, where children disguised in costume would go door to door for food or coin in various different costumes. And what they would say is, instead of our well-known trick or treat, was help the Halloween party. As until the 2000s, that was the most popular phrase. And so that seemed to make its way to North America in around 1910, 1911, with guising being kind of reference to ritual begging on Halloween in 1915, 1920 area or time frame. The earliest known use in print of the term trick or treat actually appears in 1927 in the Blackie Herald of Alberta, Canada. So a little bit of history on just costumes in general, and I think it kind of also ties back into, again, the 1920s, the Depression, things like that. Quick, easy fun, and it's actually allowed begging almost, going around asking for candy and stuff. So.
Right, and it goes back into why Caufield's was so popular. During the Great Depression is when it really started. When people didn't really have anything else to do, and they wanted to do something to entertain themselves. So that's why they went and started.
Exactly. So pretty cool. I found it interesting because I wasn't really sure what the whole history of costumes and everything was here. And so during that time, some of the, I guess you would say, most or not traditional, but the more popular costumes of the 20s was clowns, witches, and farmers. So again, playing into not a lot of money. These are things that are easy to, dress up as, because there wasn't really a market for costumes at that time. It was kind of whatever you could make or your mom could make. But I mean, farmers, we definitely know that was doable. That was, especially around here.
It was very do it yourself back then, in the I think some of that was actually inspired also by cinema at the time, with the Great Depression. Halloween was the commercialized version of Halloween was created, but also modern day cinema. So with that, a lot of people were emulating a lot of the characters they saw on TV.
Yep, exactly. But then once the 30s rolled around, thanks to a guy called Ben Cooper, he
Cooper,
good old Ben Cooper. He formed a company because with the fall of, I guess, theater during the Depression, he ended up forming a company in 1937, he established Ben Cooper Inc., and the firm assumed control of A.S. Fishbach Inc., which had license to produce costumes based on characters owned by the Walt Disney Company. So you started seeing a lot of Minnie Mouse, Donald Duck, Mickey Mouse, Snow White, things like that, you know. So in the mid to late 30s, started seeing a whole lot more once the licenses for those characters were able to be purchased and costumes made. Of course, you still saw a lot of the traditional clowns, witches, ghosts, etc., goblins, scarecrows, things like that. So, but I don't think Halloween would be quite as what we know it if it wasn't for the Ben Cooper company, my understanding of it. And then moving into the 40s, of course, we carry the same theme, which is clowns, skeletons. But you started seeing costumes get a little smaller, I guess I'll say. It was kind of the start of the sexy era of Halloween. You had, the prevalence of like pinup girls and things like that. So Monroe, I guess, all that whole era really defined a lot of the start of, I guess, what we know as a lot of modern day costumes. 50s, I found interesting. Hawaiian dress was a big one. I don't know what made that so popular in the 50s, I guess. I think that's interesting. But as well as cowboys, you had a lot of Western movies, John Wayne movies, that. So cowboys, Zorro, Tarzan, etc. And then in the 60s, with the prevalence of comic books and everything, got superheroes. So a lot of Superman, Spider-Man, Catwoman, Batgirl, those kind of things, which we've actually seen a resurgence of with all of the Marvel movies and DC and stuff.
Definitely a big game changer. Like that's one out of every 5 costumes is going to be either a superhero or like a super villain.
Especially for a kid.
Right, yeah, definitely. At that point, it's like 1 out of every 2.
Yeah. In the 70s, there was a lot of Charlie Brown and the Peanut Gang, Raggedy Ann and Andy, Barbie, Star Wars, of course. I'm sure a lot of superheroes at that time too, because comic books didn't exactly go away. They were pretty huge. So, in the 80s, Elvira and Hulk Hogan were 2 of the biggest. Which, going back to OVW, I wonder how much Caufield's sold as wrestlers then. Be interesting to have their sales records and see how much this lines up with what we found. But then, of course, in the 80s, since the first trilogy was out and everything, you still have the Star Wars and Freddy Krueger. You start seeing some of those classic horror films starting to come through. Yeah,
characters.
And then the 90s, funny, we were talking about this the other day, and, we found that the 90s was the Power Rangers, and one of the only costumes I really remember from my childhood is the White Ranger costume that my mom made me in the 90s. So I was probably like 96, 97, somewhere around there. But then you had Ninja Turtles, Star Trek, and even South Park. So
all those definitely 90s, and then probably like the Crow. Like I know anytime like you went to a Halloween party, late 90s, early 2000s, people always joked that somebody dressed up as Brandon Lee from the Crow.
I mean, that was a huge movie though. That was a good movie.
It was awesome.
Fit. It definitely fit.
Definitely, yeah.
And then speaking of early 2000s, we also started seeing a prevalence of celebrity costumes. So people dressing up to look like Michael Jackson, Britney Spears, Hannah Montana, and, things like that. Prince.
Madonna, I know that was a big one. Like even a little bit before then, but yeah, you're right. There would just be Halloween parties, just celebrity. People just dress up as.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And then that's also when Harry Potter and SpongeBob started coming out, and then the Joker, going back to the superhero, supervillain stuff. Of course, I mean that was probably around even before then, but with the resurgence of the Batman movies, the Batman, the one with the Dark Knight,
yes.
and the Dark Knight Rises, that that brought that Joker into it.
Definitely in the same imagery as like almost like the Crow, like just how like the Crow was very popular, you know, in like the late early 2000s or whatever, late 90s. Same thing with the Joker now, or people dress up as the Joker.
Yep. And then going into the 2010s, a lot of Frozen for kids, especially Frozen everywhere. Again, Avengers, we've seen a resurgence of the superhero themes. DC's kind of made a comeback too, you know, it was all Marvel for a long time, and, you know, Batman's coming back, you know, Wonder Woman, so Suicide Squad, so you got the Harley Quinn and the Joker now. Saw a lot of Game of Thrones characters, Stranger Things, Hocus Pocus, because they did that remake.
Right, bringing that back.
But political figures as well, so not gonna just start name dropping, but I'm sure that was always a thing before, but here recently that was a big one because of the 2016 election. So
right, yeah, now it's more common, but they've always they actually used to track the amount of presidential candidates, the masks that would be sold, and, you know, decide whether or not that was going to like figure out, you know, who would win. And a lot of times you'd be surprised like how much, like, it wasn't every time, but a lot of times it would coincide with the actual election.
That's kind of funny and maybe a little scary.
Both.
And then coming into the 2020s, we've seen a lot of Karate Kid, so we know the whole Cobra Kai Netflix show. Mandalorian, of course, still playing on Star Wars themes, which I'm sure there was a lot of Star Wars in the 2000s too. There was so much in media in the like early 2000s. I feel like it'd be hard to really hit all of the costumes. It's hard to hit them all anyways, but. And then Trolls, the Trolls movies that have been coming out have definitely had an impact on kids. I know my daughter was Trolls when.
Big fan.
Yeah, she's gone as Trolls, and it's crazy how much the licensing played such a role in a lot of these things. All the shows that kids get the influence from. It's crazy to look back at the 20s and see it's just, you know, clowns, witches, farmers, skeletons, that kind of stuff. And then you see it now. Just the level of detail that goes into some costumes is insane. I mean, cosplay is a thing, so.
Yeah, you're right there. So it's not, like, we're kind of focusing a lot on Halloween, but it is everything with the costumes, like, especially like with, like, Caufields. They're open all year around.
Yeah.
Right, so throughout the year, it's not Halloween, you know. Like you said, cosplay, there's productions, there's art, you know, different things people are doing costumes for, so.
Yep. Well, and not just that, they don't just have that. They have so many decorations and stuff. They sell like event things like the rolls of tickets. If you ever need to get rolls of tickets for an event, it's on their website, you know? Awesome. So things like that. They just have a lot of things if you're trying to do an event for anything, Mardi Gras, 4th of July, whatever, they got decorations for so many things. So, pretty cool place. Definitely part of Louisville history in my mind, at least when it comes to talking costumes. So had to give kind of fun talking about the history of costumes too. I learned a little bit, just, you know, we're trying to read up on it. So I guess with that's all that I have. Do you have anything else you want to add, brother?
No, that's it.
All right. I guess with that, we'll see you next time. Thanks for hanging out.